if you extend this line of logic out and you begin to think about, well, if he went so far to buy a Dickies outfit to cover himself with, and he's bought the balaclava, he has probably got gloves. He's going to walk into this environment. Did he take other precautions when he got into the car to shield the interior of the car? Well, by the time they finally, get the car.
Where we left off shortly before the break was we had been talking about the sheath, and you had been speculating, that this may have been some very fucked up, like, sexual fantasy where then he dropped the sheath and, became a monster and did this whole thing. But then after he kills Mogan and Kaylee up there, who again, he may have found Kaylee unexpectedly, he then has to find a way out of the building.
He's got to exfil. He's got to get back out of this place, this complicated maze that still baffles me that, he made it through the structure. There's so much of this it's indicative of somebody that has at least paid attention to the layout of this place to the point where he can navigate in the dark, make his way through this place, and still get out and seemingly leave nothing behind but a knife sheath. Now, there was some talk at one point in time that there had been a bloody footprint that was left behind by maybe a van shoe, like Vans.
Oh, yeah.
And it's got a very distinctive pattern, may have been in blood. And again, we still don't know a lot about that other than the fact that one of the things that was pointed out was that there were other people in that house that wore Vans as well. So we don't know. Hopefully some of that's going to come out in the record as more and more of the stuff is being released, because even as we're talking right now, there's still wrangling that's going on about when there's going to be a major data dump, and seemingly, and it's kind of an interesting little aside, I've been covering this thing for so long. How long ago was it?
It was November 13th, 2022.
Yeah, no, I started then, but recently when Dateline did their Friday night show, that they did this big reveal. No offense to Dateline, I don't watch Dateline. I don't watch shows like this. No, it's just not my thing, man. So I wake up Saturday morning and turn my phone, look at it, and I see that I'm tagged in an image, and it says, "Wow, obviously a fan of Joe Scott's," and my handle is like Joe Scott Forensics on X. Well, I'll look at it, and it is a screenshot from Dateline, and my image is on it. And my wife and I, as we always do, we're old. We sit there early in the morning and drink coffee together, and I'm like,
"You drink coffee?
Yeah,
I didn't know that."
What the shit? And I like show that, and immediately it's like she turned to ashen. It bothered her down to her core, because I'd been talking about this thing for so long in the news and this sort of thing. He, as it turns out, according to Dateline, in this data dump that they initially did, or this information that they acquired, he had been watching all of these shows that I was appearing on, and not just me, other people. And they had a digital record of this stuff that he had been viewing. And so it gave me a thought back to our earlier supposition that I put forward about, who's listening, who's watching. It really kind of made me pause for a second. I'm thinking, what did I say in that interim between when this went down back in November to the point that they finally put the bracelets on his ass? What had I said during that middle period? What did any of us say? Did we give him any kind of insight into, because, it was back then that I was saying, whoever did this, their car was like a rolling crime scene, because unless you covered the seats in some manner, which he may have, you're not going to be able to get out of this without leaving some remnant behind. It goes back to my forensic hero, Edmond Lacard. Every contact leaves a trace. that when you sit in this car, you're going to transfer certain elements into this environment, whether it be hair, skin, or blood. And, how do you get past that relative to these barriers that you have to create in order to ensure that you're not going to leave a trace of yourself in this vehicle? Because if you extend this line of logic out and you begin to think about, well, if he went so far to buy a Dickies outfit to cover himself with, and he's bought the balaclava, he has probably got gloves, he's going to walk into this environment. Did he take other precautions when he got into the car to shield the interior of the car? Well, by the time they finally, get the car, which is another kind of infamous story, when, they raided the parents' house over in the Poconos, he's in there in his underwear and he's like wearing gloves and he's transferring trash all around the place, trying to bag it separately to keep things. He had apparently an awareness of the types of things that we did. I'm not trying to make this about me. I'm just saying what
perfectly normal behavior. If you're his family watching this, seems right.
What did I say anything in the interim that? And he's watching everything that's out there. He's been studying this for years and years. It did give me pause at that moment in time, though, to think about this.
I understand why you would have that because you're a deep thinking, very moral guy. But at the same time, it's like whenever a case like this goes down, once the unthinkable has happened, it's going to be reported on, and it's going to be speculated on everywhere. Someone's right. It's not even just the prisoner's dilemma of like, well, someone's going to do it. It's also like the public wants to know how these things happen, and then what do you mean you don't have the killer?
Yeah.
And then you have to explain, well, here's how you could hypothetically cover tracks and things like that. You're doing your job, and like if not to be harsh, but if the detectives and the FBI and all the resources on it aren't smart enough to be a half a step ahead of that, and a half a step only needs to be 3 hours sometimes, that's kind of on them.
Yeah, it is. And that was the big cry that went up. And what a lot of people don't understand about the Moscow Police Department, and I found this out really early on, you are supposed to pronounce it Moscow. Just like Costco,
they don't like Russia.
Don't dig on Moscow, so it has to be Moscow. So I had to learn that. But anyway,
very, very aggressive.
So they're a department that is in total is about 24 people. Just let that sink in for a second. And so they're having to invite these other agencies in, whether it's the state police or certainly the feds, to give them a hand with this. I think that probably many of us that were kind of observing this, and certainly my colleagues in forensics, you're thinking, well, have they done everything that they needed to do to lock this thing? I'm not talking about even processing the scene. I'm just talking about securing the scene until those that are at maybe a higher altitude can actually view this thing and begin to understand how to work your way through this to collect all of the evidence. First off, recognize it, preserve it, and then collect it after you've documented everything. Did they ensure that was going to happen? There were some troubling moments, I think, along the way. One of the biggest things that kind of, I guess it was probably 2 or 3 days afterwards, there was something that kind of struck me as odd that had occurred. The coroner from out in that jurisdiction gave an interview. And that's something that...
The coroner did?
Yeah, that's something that doesn't happen most of the time, because if you just envision, that's the way I describe it to my students, you have an investigative bubble, and there's really nobody that should penetrate that. And there are certain expectations of people that are within that environment of your responsibilities. And one of the biggest responsibility is don't say anything. And because you don't know if that's going to damage the case. Mm-hmm. And the coroner would have very intimate knowledge of walking in. Well, she had stated early on in the first interview that she gave that they were apparently all asleep. Well, as it turns out, they were not all asleep. As a matter of fact, nothing could be further from the truth. So I knew something was up when I heard that, and it makes you wonder about
What
other
else they fucked up.
Yeah, what else had happened? We were that close. I say we. I'm not going to take personal possession of this thing, but it was that close to everything within that house being eradicated relative to evidence, because before Kohberger was actually arrested, they had agreed to have a crime scene cleanup company come out and begin to purge this place. I guess they wanted to get it back on the market or whatever was going to happen, because this thing was still privately owned. As a matter of fact, there is actually an image of a crime scene cleanup truck backed up to the door, and they have created a plastic cave to walk into this thing. They had just, I don't remember the exact date, but they had just hooked Kohberger up. And he had defense counsel for him in Pennsylvania. And they were like, whoa. We want our own people to come and take a look at this before you go through and clean this thing up, quote unquote.
If they had done that.
Yeah, I know. And that's how close it was. And that goes to the idea that, we could chase this rabbit all day long about tearing down the structure.
Yeah.
Which is something that has stuck in my craw and others.
Because they did it too soon?
I just don't think it was wise to do it at all. You wouldn't have any way of knowing, but Julian, I've worked a lot of homicides in my career, okay, between New Orleans and Atlanta. I don't ever recall over that period of time where I had a homicide scene that was in a structure where the structure had been razed, like just taken down to the ground.
Didn't they wait, they did that December 2023, though? They waited over a year. So you still think, because you're saying, if I'm understanding this correctly, because the case was ongoing at the time, it had not been adjudicated.
Yeah, and the only rationale they could give is that it creates bad memories and it makes people sad. I don't care. I don't care. It makes sense. I like to look at Parkland High School, and they put chain link fence around the thing and they locked it down. And one of the reasons was that they gave is they couldn't afford to provide security for it. And I'm thinking, and I know a bit more now, but one of the big issues with the structure, as we've talked about, is I think the acoustics in there. You begin to think about, what did people hear at any particular time? Do you recall that there was still a roommate that was downstairs?
Weren't there two? There was Dylan, and then there was
another
girl.
one that was on the parking pad.
What was her name? Emily?
Mm-hmm.
Is that?
Yeah.
I might have made that
and
up.
she was physically in there, and you're thinking, well, is it possible she could have heard something?
Thank you guys for checking out this clip. If you haven't already subscribed, please subscribe and hit the like button on this video. It is a huge, huge help. And if you'd like to check out this clip's full podcast episode, that link is in the description below or right here. And finally, you can follow me on Instagram and X by using the links in my description below.